Lester to the left. Press coverage, snap. Tahini throws it over the middle. Intercepted. B.J. Raji to the end zone for the touchdown. NFC Championship dagger. Blitz is on. Rodgers scrambles left, winds up rainbow. He's got Cobb at the 10 to the 5 to the end zone. Touchdown and a dagger.
The Wisconsin Sports Trilogy presents the Packers Trilogy Podcast.
Heyo, Packer fans, what's going on? Welcome to the Packers Trilogy Podcast presented by the Wisconsin Sports Trilogy, the podcast for diehard Packer fans by diehard Packer fans. I am your host, Trevor. You can find me on Twitter at Bender_Trevor. And I am joined, as always, with my good buddy Tyler, aka T Plush. Tyler is the host of the Brewers Trilogy Podcast and a co-founder of the Wisconsin Sports Trilogy. He also is a contributor for Reviewing the Brew. You can find Tyler and all of his content on Twitter at Tyler Kurth. As always, you can find us on Twitter at Trilogy_pod. You can find the podcast also on Facebook and on YouTube. We are the Wisconsin Sports Trilogy Podcast on both of those social channels. Today, we are going to recap the Packers' victory against the Houston Texans. Before we start talking some Packers football, Tyler, how are you doing?
I'm doing quite well. We actually got to watch the game together today, and then I went home and we're recording separately. So one of those situations, but I mean, it was a good game. It was a day where I thought I was going to clear up my liquor cabinet with shots, but we stopped after the first touchdown. But you took a nap as I went home. I came home, made some hot cocoa, and now I'm recording with you. So that's been my day.
Yeah, and when the Packers win that big, you know, it's definitely going to be a good day. 35-20. Like normal, I'm going to do a little bit of a recap. Then we're going to go into our talking points. And the YouTube side of this podcast might get a little extra bonus footage. So make sure you check that out. But let's go into the game, Tyler. First drive, Packers go 10 plays, 75 yards for the score. And then Houston, 3-and-out. Packers then go 3-and-out and punt. Houston does get a first down on their second drive, but they end up punting after that. Next drive, Packers score a touchdown. Houston punt. Packers punt. Houston missed field goal. Packers score a touchdown. Then Houston gets the ball to end the half, and it's 21-0 going into halftime. And seems like the Packers are back at that point. Then to start the second half, Houston scores a touchdown. Packers then respond with a touchdown of their own. Both drives are 75 yards. Then back-to-back punts from Houston and Green Bay. Then Houston scores a field goal. Packers get their punt blocked on the next drive. Houston scores another field goal. Packers punt. Houston turns it over on downs. Packers score a touchdown. Houston scores a touchdown to make it 35-20. And then they get the onside kick, which was actually a pretty nice onside kick. One that I think the kicker really won them that onside. And, you know, they get the ball back and then put the hat on the football, and the football flies 50 feet in the air, and the Packers recover it to end the game there, 35-20. And a game where it never felt like the Packers were going to lose this. You know, even when the offense wasn't consistently clicking and they weren't in this game, you know, there was plenty of punts. They weren't scoring on every single drive. They didn't feel as dominant as they were the first 4 weeks, but they were still very good, moving the football the majority of the time and scoring when they need to. And, you know, 35 points, even against a not-so-good Houston defense, is definitely something to celebrate, and feels like the Packers teams are back a little bit. Hopefully got their mojo, their confidence back a little bit. But let's go and talk about this game. Tyler, what is your first talking point from this game? Who stood out? What was your first talking point of this football game?
Well, I mean, there's obviously one big player who stands out. In case you didn't know, Davante Adams was absolutely incredible this game. Finishes with 13 catches, 196 yards, 2 touchdowns, had that nice long 45-yard touchdown catch, which really just looked like the Texans defender gave up on that one. He just kind of waltzed in at the end there. But it's just weird to think about. Like in the first quarter, they showed Davante Adams stats, and he had like 4 catches for 19 yards. And I mean, they were all on like those little pick crossers and just wasn't gaining a whole lot. And then they just kept feeding him. And I mean, the Texans, even at the end of the first half, weren't even disguising that they were double teaming him because they just couldn't stop him. They had no answers for him. And Aaron Rodgers just kept going to him. I mean, Jamaal Williams was the second leading receiver. And then after that, you got some tight ends with a couple catches. Malik Taylor had 2 catches, no, that 1 touchdown, but not a lot of targets. MVS failed to record a catch. So with Aaron Jones out, it was the Davante Adams show, and I loved it.
Yeah, it definitely was the Davante Adams show. He was very, very impressive in this football game. It was really fun to watch. Like you mentioned, Tyler, in the first quarter, they were feeding him the ball, but he wasn't really getting a lot of yards. And then, it was like all of a sudden, Davante was just like, no, I'm going to get what I want. And one of those plays that he was like, I'm just going to get what I want is this play I'm going to show here. So if you're listening to the normal podcast, check out the YouTube video. It'll be about the same timestamp right now as you're listening. We're going to show this play from Davante, and Tyler pointed it out to me instantly while we were watching the game together, and this was just an impressive play. So I'm going to play this video here. I'm going to try to talk over it a little bit too, but just impressive stuff. I'm just going to show the play as a whole to begin with, and then we're going to highlight Davante here. We're going to go into a little bit slow-mo of what he did to get as wide open as he did. So here we highlight him. You can watch him on the play. Play action, get that orbit action as well. Davante's wide open and gets down to, the 5-yard line on the play. And here we're going to slow it down. Just watch how disgusting this move is off the line. It is ridiculous. Davante gets the quarterback going like he's going to run like a fade route, and Davante's, halfway across the field already at that point. Just amazing, amazing route running from Davante Adams. And thank you, Tyler, for pointing that out, because that was an awesome, awesome route from Davante.
Yeah, it certainly was. And they were showing this replay when we were watching together. You were watching the play action and all the motion, and I was sitting there rolling on the floor laughing. I'm like, dude, that cornerback just opened up the wrong way, and poof, Adams is gone. I mean, he makes it look so easy, and it's easy to forget just how incredible his route running is, because not many receivers can do that.
Yeah, no, there is very few out there that can run routes like Davante Adams. He was very, very impressive in this game, and like I said, if you're listening to the podcast, go back and watch the YouTube video, because that route is just incredible. I know we did it multiple times throughout the game, but just watching that route again, just as a Packer fan, just kind of gets you giddy, because that play was absolutely incredible stuff from Davante Adams. And I honestly, if you take Davante away, who is the next most, important Packer, the one that had the next best performance? I'd probably have to say Jamaal Williams. Jamaal Williams was very good in this game. You look at his stat lines, 19 carries for 77 yards. His long was 13. That's a 4.1 yard average with a touchdown. And then you add in his receiving, 4 receptions for 37 yards. That's a 9.3 yard average with 5 targets, no touchdowns. He had a long of 17 in the receiving game. He was just, if it wasn't Davante, it felt like it was a handoff to Jamaal Williams or a swing screen to Jamaal Williams. It was just like Davante Adams, Davante Adams, Davante Adams. And then once that was like, you wanted to go away from that, try something else, it was Jamaal Williams. And Jamaal Williams did a great job with Aaron Jones out this week. He was very effective. Tyler and I were talking before the game started. We expected A.J. Dillon to break out a little bit, expected him to get a few more carries. Tyler said, I want to see him get 10 carries. Now he only gets 5 for 11 yards. You expected a little bit more out of that, especially with Aaron Jones out. But Jamaal Williams had a hell of a day in the backfield, and that really helped this team be able to continue to move the ball consistently because he was doing a good job on the ground. Tyler, what is your next talking point for this game?
Yeah, I mean, you're not going to argue with 114 total yards from Jamaal Williams. I do think they kind of used him in a lot more of that motion role like we had seen Tyler Ervin in the past, especially when A.J. Dillon was in. I mean, granted, it just, for whatever reason, the Packers offensive line couldn't open up any holes for Dillon. He only has 11 yards on the ground. That's a 2.2 yard average. There's just nothing really significant there, and I don't think it has anything to do with A.J. Dillon. The holes weren't there for him. So hopefully he continues to get some more chances. I mean, or maybe hopefully he doesn't, because hopefully Aaron Jones just stays healthy. But yeah, it was good to see Williams come up in that role. I mean, he caught passes, as we mentioned. He was playing the slots. So I was happy with that. I do want to talk about the Malik Taylor touchdown a little bit, because as that play was happening, we're sitting there and we're like, all right, Rodgers, it's probably going to be like play action. He's going to scramble to the right. It's going to be a touchdown. We're trying to predict who the players are going to be. And all of a sudden it was play action. Rodgers goes left. Malik Taylor. I was like, what? Just the complete opposite of what I expected. And that's just the beauty of the Matt LaFleur offense. Even when you think and a play action's coming, all of a sudden he's going to the opposite side of the field, and the defense stood no chance whatsoever. So I love that play design on that touchdown.
Yeah, that was pretty awesome. Something as simple as changing the way Rodgers is booting and then throwing in someone not that you're not going to cover NFL receivers at all, but throwing it to Malik Taylor in that situation, as a defense, you're not expecting that. You're expecting it as we were. We were expecting Robert Tonyan, Davante Adams, Jamaal Williams via handoff, maybe Jay Sternberger, who got a touchdown in this game. You were not expecting Malik Taylor. And like you said, that's the beauty of this Matt LaFleur offense, that you can just hand it off or throw it to whoever's in the game. And as long as they're executing their job correctly, a lot of times they don't have to win one-on-ones because Matt LaFleur is doing the job for them in scheming the plays to make a lot of sense and get them open. Speaking of that, I do think it's worth mentioning Aaron Rodgers was pretty good today. What I felt like it was kind of like what the offense was. I felt like the offense was good, but it wasn't quite what it was in the first 4 weeks. The offense scores 35 points. Rodgers has a quarterback rating of 100, or a passer rating, of 132.4. Very good, but there's times in this game where, even on the first touchdown to Davante Adams, it felt like he was just behind him a little bit. There is other plays throughout the course of the game that just a little bit behind his receivers, but overall, very, very good. The play down the sidelines to end the first quarter. So I believe it was the play before we highlighted on this podcast that he's throwing a back shoulder to Davante, and it was brilliantly timed. Or it wasn't even a back shoulder. It was just perfectly placed over the cornerback, perfectly timed, perfectly placed. Great catch by Davante. And they mentioned on the broadcast that, Davante just did a good job of not bringing his hands up. No, Davante turned around and the ball was basically in his lap, is because that's why he wasn't showing that he was catching the football. Just a brilliant throw, and we saw a lot of that. But like I said, there was just a few plays where it didn't seem like Rodgers was 100% Aaron Rodgers. And I feel like that's kind of who we should expect from here on out. He's not going to be 2011 Aaron Rodgers, who was absolutely ridiculous and made every single throw perfectly. But he's still going to be the guy that can make incredible throws and might miss here and there. But overall, I thought he was very good today. 23 of 34, 283. It's an 8.3 yard per attempt average, and he had the 4 touchdowns. Like I said, passer rating of 132.4. And maybe the most important thing, and this isn't directly related to Aaron Rodgers, but no sacks. A lot of that's probably more the Texans' defense, more so than the offensive line or Aaron Rodgers. But it was very nice to see Aaron Rodgers upright the majority of the game.
Yeah, I mean, especially with Bakhtiari out, I thought Billy Turner held up really well at left tackle. I mean, did we ever say his name other than, hey, look, that's Billy Turner at left tackle? That was really about it. So that's obviously a good thing. And, man, that play you were talking about with Davante at the end of the first, I believe there was a free blitzer on that play too. So, like, that's how the ball got in Adams, basically in his lap, like you said, right away. But, I mean, kind of going back to the blocking, I mean, I think there was one or two specific plays that I can remember where Jamaal Williams just like missed his assignment or failed to pick up a blitzer. And it seemed like that was a huge issue last week against the Buccaneers. And you saw it a couple times today. Just the only difference was Rodgers was able to escape a couple times. So I do think that is slightly concerning in Jamaal Williams games. And I mean, kind of going back to Aaron Rodgers here now, you talked about him just not quite being, 2011 Aaron Rodgers. I mean, that's true. 2011 Aaron Rodgers is hitting Big Dog Tanyan on that pass where he should have walked into the end zone when he lofted it, a million feet up in the air, and Tanyan had to dive at it instead. I mean, 2011, that's an easy touchdown. But Rodgers is still going to move the needle. I mean, 35 points, you're not going to argue with that. He's still one of the best in the league.
Yeah, definitely. I would agree with that. And, I think for the most part, he was very good. Like I said, there's just a few plays where it just felt like he was off a little bit. But then you see plays like we were explaining with that Davante play, you couldn't have put it in a better spot. And that defensive back, that poor defensive back, was in damn near perfect coverage, didn't pass interfere, was playing everything right, and he still gets the ball completed on him, which is just really unfortunate if you're a defensive back. Like, what else are you supposed to do? You stay with Davante on that route that he runs, gets up the sidelines, you stay with him, he doesn't burn you off the line of scrimmage, and then it still doesn't matter because Aaron Rodgers throws a perfect ball and they get the yards they need. And then I believe, like I said, that was to end the first quarter, and then not the next play, the following play, the second play of the second quarter was that nice touchdown, or not touchdown, the nice play from Davante that we highlighted earlier on. I do want to mention the defense a little bit. I went through the series by series kind of breakdown, and they were very good early on in this game. I think they really won them the game initially. You go up 21-0 and at halftime, and then your offense scores another 14 points. It's going to be pretty tough for a team to score 35 and a half. But they played extremely well, and giving up 20 points to this Houston offense is not a bad thing. But you look at this, what they made the Houston team do in the first half. It is punt on a 3-and-out, punt on 6 plays, so they got 1 first down, then punt on 6 plays, they missed a field goal, and then it was the end of the half where it was 1 play for 3 yards, and they just ran out the half. But, you look at that, there was one drive where Houston moved the ball in the first half, and they ended up holding them to be able to miss the field goal. Now, it wasn't like an ultra-long field goal that they missed. I believe it was 32 yards. So you don't anticipate them missing that very often. But the defense did a very, very good job in that first half and definitely deserves some credit. Tyler, were there anyone on the defense that really stood out to you individually that made a lot of plays in your eyes?
Yeah, both of our inside linebackers, Kamal Martin and Chris Barnes, I thought were just absolutely incredible. They both end up with at least 1 tackle for loss in the game today. Chris Barnes was injured, I think, on the first play of the second half. So you have to remind, I honestly can't remember right now. I'm brain farting if he came back in or not. But they were both awesome. It's good to see Martin activated for today. He was out there on the first drive, making plays. Even if other players are there, he's still joining up into the pile, fighting for the football. And I think one time when the play was dead, he actually ended up with the football. So, those little things could be the difference, if the whistle's a second later or whatever in a game in the future to come. But I mean, their presence today really helps slow down this Texans running game. I mean, David Johnson finishes with 42 yards. Deshaun Watson has 38 here. I mean, you worry about, especially Watson, just going off on this Packers run defense, but they only give up 79 total rushing yards all game. Maybe a part of that was being up ahead early, but even like in the first quarter, I mean, there was just nothing there for David Johnson. So I was really impressed.
Yeah, there definitely wasn't anything there for David Johnson early in that game. Mainly, Tyler, you know this because I kept complaining of why the hell did I start him this week in fantasy. So he definitely didn't have anything going until he caught that touchdown pass, which kind of saved my fantasy matchup this week. But you mentioned Chris Barnes, Kamal Martin did a good job. I'm going to talk about the sacks because I have a video coming up. Now, as you're listening to this on Monday, it'll be coming up tomorrow. Tuesday, it has a new video coming up about, what happened in that Bucs game. What was happening that we weren't able to get any pressure on Tom Brady. And there was a variety of reasons. One was play calling, rushing 2 to 3 guys consistently was an issue. And then also when they weren't rushing and they were sending some blitzes, they were not making Tom Brady get off his spot, anything like that. In this game, they got to the quarterback. They didn't always get the sacks, and Chandon Sullivan a couple times missed opportunities, whether it be sprinting by Deshaun Watson or jumping for some reason in front of Deshaun Watson, and it just not worked that way. And if it's not Deshaun Watson and it's a Tom Brady, a Drew Brees, Matt Stafford, Nick Foles, those are going to amount to a little bit more sack totals, but sacking Deshaun Watson 3 times for 23 yards is very good. And the guys that recorded sacks this week, Chris Barnes, as you mentioned, Adrian Amos, and then Zadarius Smith with our 3 sacks. So that's something that definitely needs to continue. I think making quarterbacks uncomfortable is something that this defense needs to be able to do. And the fact that the Packers were able to do that, and yes, Deshaun Watson was able to make some ground up by running the football, making plays with his legs, I do think it is nice to see that those Packers defensive linemen and even Mike Pettin kind of scheming up some pressure a little bit to make some plays against the quarterbacks is important. And I am glad to see it, and hopefully that continues because to me, that was one of the biggest issues on the defensive side of the ball in that Buccaneers game.
Oh, yeah.
Tyler,
Absolutely.
do you have any? Go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, the pressure absolutely was. I mean, it's good to see Zadarius finally do another sack celebration, even though it was probably your least favorite celebration. So that's unfortunate for you. But I mean, even the other guys, even if they weren't recording the sacks, it just felt like the pressure was there. The pocket was collapsing all day on Deshaun Watson. So it's just completely different than the Buccaneers game, even against Larry Tunsil, one of the best left tackles. I believe he had a holding call today, and no matter who was on that side, Rashawn Gary, Preston, Darius, they were all just doing work. So hopefully it's something to build off of because we've really been ripping this pass rush a new one most of the season here. So hopefully they're listening now.
Yeah, I think they're starting to come around. Now, I don't think this Texans offensive line is great, and the Vikings next week, which again, not a great offensive line, but start getting your confidence, start getting your mojo back in these games where you feel like you have the matchups to make some ground and get to the quarterback quite a bit. You have to make them up here, get your confidence up, feel like you can win any one-on-one going into, San Francisco and some of those games down the stretch where the offensive line might be a little bit better than the situations in, say, Houston and Minnesota. So for me, I think that was pretty much all of the highlights. I wanted to talk about the pressures in this game. The defense doing a little bit better job. I wanted to talk about Aaron Rodgers, Jamaal Williams, and obviously Davante Adams was incredible. I'm just going to talk about his stat line here a little bit again because it was awesome to see. 13 receptions, 196 yards. That's a 15-yard average with 2 touchdowns. Again, that 45-yard touchdown, which was awesome to see. And you go down the rest of the receiving stats here in the box score, and the Packers had 23 receptions as a team. So Davante had 13 of those, so there was 10 receptions for the rest of the team. And Houston still couldn't stop us, knowing that Davante is going to be the guy they're going to throw to, and they still couldn't stop us. And then when it wasn't Davante, Jamaal Williams with 4 receptions, Robert Tonyan had 2, Malik Taylor had 2, and then Mercedes Lewis had 1, Jay Sternberger had 1 for that touchdown. And then MVS was targeted 4 times with no catches. Darius Shepard was targeted once and didn't have a catch. So really just looked like we doubled and tripled down on Davante in this game, and he performed greatly and really took us to victory in this one. Tyler, do you have anything else you wanted to mention, whether it be defense, offense, anything like that?
Well, you left out special teams, so I figured we'd talk about Dexter Williams completely missing the block on that punt when J.K. Scott got blocked. And then, of course, he's not out there the next punt. So, I mean, he was activated because Aaron Jones was obviously not playing today. So that's literally the last straw for him. If you can't execute on special teams, it's goodbye. Sorry, Dexter.
Yeah, I would agree with you. It's definitely, especially as a young player who needs to prove himself, you need to perform on special teams when you get the opportunity, and you can't have that. That's not going to be something that teams can afford to be able to keep you on active rosters, maybe even 53-man rosters, maybe even practice squad rosters, if you can't perform when you're needed to. Because as a practice squad player, when you come up, you know you're going to be having to play special teams, and you have to perform in there. So I honestly, with his performance today, when you can't trust him in those situations, it's very tough to want to or need to call him up in certain situations. So definitely something to monitor there. You mentioned J.K. Scott. He was pretty good today. I believe if you take out that blocked punt, he had a 51.8-yard average today. One of those inside the 20, a long of 62, which I believe was his first punt, because that one was gorgeous. But pretty good day from J.K. Scott. Typically he's a guy that does really, really well in nice weather. So hopefully he can figure out the cold weather punting a little bit. But, he had a good game. And hopefully we don't have to say that very often because the offense moves the ball a little bit more. But overall, I don't think there was anyone that had an egregiously bad game. J.K. Scott looked good. Aaron Rodgers, Davante Adams, Jamaal Williams. The defense overall looked good. Like I said, giving up 20 points to this Houston offense is not a terrible thing. This is a good, talented offense. So that's good to hold them to 20 points. Maybe you would have liked to score an extra touchdown, against this Houston defense, but 35-20 cannot complain. And that is going to be it for us this week. Really, really solid win for this Green Bay Packers team. Make sure you continue to check out the YouTube channel. Kind of pumping out content here. Tyler put out his first solo video on the Brewers, specifically Josh Lindblom, so make sure you're checking that out. And we're getting more content out there. We're starting to post our podcast as videos. I have that defensive pressure video coming up this week. So make sure you check us out there. We have the Wisconsin Sports Trilogy podcast on YouTube. Make sure you're checking us out on all our other social feeds. Facebook, the Wisconsin Sports Trilogy podcast, on Twitter @Trilogy_pod. Make sure you follow, subscribe on whatever your favorite podcasting platform is. And until next time, go Pack Go.
Adams for president.